Numbers and letters and words really stimulate this left hemisphere, particularly your speaking areas, your Broca areas. I like numbers also. It actually adds just a little bit of a different challenge to the brain, but it's still really cool. And digit span is really good for both words, well, numbers in particular, words and letters, but it also helps your verbal centers. It's good for short-term memory and what we call working memory. And the other things that we talked about, and we have hand movement and eye movement. Today, I would like to include, excuse me, I would like to include hand movement. And with today's testing, I would recommend working with a partner, spouse, family member, whatever takes place there. Because I'd like to talk about both the parietal lobes and the temporal lobes, or the temple area. Okay, so the parietal lobes are just above that, and then you got the temporal lobes here. The parietal lobes are really cool because, and I haven't figured out, I hesitate because I haven't tied it completely together, but as Muslims, we are ordered to lower our gaze. It's about not just looking down and not knowing what's around you, but the looking down part. Actually, when we talk about the parietal lobes, and my son actually recommended that I start using my model brain that's in the background. So we're going to try this today. Here's your frontal lobe, and you can see literally everything in front of this line here. This, what we call this sulcus. Everything here is frontal lobe. And then you've got the parietal lobe here. You've got the temporal lobes down here. You've got the occiput, or your vision centers, and they feed forward. And then you've got your cerebellum and your brainstem. And it opens up in half. And you can see on the inside with cool numbers and memory, hippocampus, all that stuff. But we're going to stay out here today. So last week, we literally covered this whole area right here. Now, today, like I said, I'd like to talk about the parietal lobe and the temporal lobes, okay? And the parietal lobes are for a real easy description, these are your awareness lobes, all right? These are the areas that tell you about your inner awareness. That's the baby stuff, which is not baby stuff, but it's really easy to see in children that when the baby is doing things, it's literally all about themselves. But they're very aware of their surroundings. They're learning from their surroundings. They pick up on, they love movement. When they're looking at your face, it's not so much at the beginning facial recognition, it's more about movement recognition. They're watching the movement of your eyebrows. They're watching the movement of your face, showing the teeth, the smiling, the frowning, the expressions. When I have patients when they bring the babies in, if I'm not treating the baby at the time, a lot of babies will pitch a fit. The minute the mother or the father lays down and they don't see their face anymore on the table, lose their minds like clockwork. So I go right into being distracting as much as I can, depending on the child, whether they respond or not. But the idea is I literally use their awareness, and right there, it's almost all vision and parietal lobe, okay? Awareness. I use that, and I move a lot. I talk a lot. I change my voice a lot to give them new stimulation. If I'm moving the table with a patient on it, they start eyeballing the movement of my hand and the table. It's really, and then when I change my tones, and then when the parent rolls over and I do my thing, the movement is really important. And that's literally, if I can say it this way, it's not as precise and scientific, but if I can say this as their awareness lobes, they are very aware of their surroundings with that. And when they are newborns, like the sister was talking about her grandchild, at newborn, they've got what we've talked about before, their primitive reflexes. That is learning these, and they just look at them. They see them move, they look at yours. They don't know their hands yet. And eventually they learn, holy cow, they actually move when I want them to. they do things, then everything goes into the mouth, doesn't it? And even the feet at that age, everything goes into the mouth. Very sensitive, very highly innervated. And that's why. So then they learn themselves. They learn what makes them feel good. They learn, hopefully, that's one of the things about ADHD and severe, when you start moving out farther and farther on the spectrum. If it's a weak right hemisphere and a dominant, super dominant left, strong hemisphere, they don't pick up on the inner awareness that is more right hemisphere. Okay. And they would be externally driven, but then they don't understand facial expressions. They don't understand feelings. Sometimes they can't, when it's severe enough, they don't even feel themselves. So how can they feel how to move their mouths, how to move their tongue, how to do anything? Facial expressions, what does that mean? I think I've mentioned it before with the idea that a lot of autistic people, adults too, a lot of autistic people spend more time with vision tests. They spend more time looking at the mouth moving, because if you don't understand expressions, you just watch the mouth to see that, yes, there's the voice, there's the information, there's what's coming out. Others, what we call neurodivergent, neurotypicals tend to watch the whole face, and it scans, and it goes from eyes to mouth to smiles to up above to below to side, back and forth, eyes, mouth, up, down. So neurotypicals, we tend to do that. If the farther over you are on the spectrum, the less attention you pay to the whole face, you start to go down to just the mouth. And then it becomes, you don't even have to look. You just hear the voice. I've told this story before. My mother was correcting her son and telling him to look at me look when you're being spoken to. And I knew his background. I knew him. And I politely said, you don't have to. And I reminded the mother, I said, he responds immediately. He's paying attention to me. He just has no need to look at me. And I don't have any problems with that. And slowly but surely, he started coming in by himself, or, his mother could wait out in the lobby because he was a young teenager. And he literally, and he had his pattern. He'd be in the chair waiting for me to come into the room. Real great kid. I like him a lot. He'd be in the chair. He'd be sitting there. He'd have his slides on. He was there, and his pattern of behavior and his posture, and he was very, very structured. And then I'd walk in. He'd immediately stand up, and at first he'd wait for me to say something. Then he'd stand up and start. He'd slide his shoes off exactly the same way. He'd slide them to the same spot next to the chair. And then when he realized after the first visit alone, he realized how much I walk around the table. So after that visit, he literally every time stand up, slide his shoes off, slide his shoes over and back behind the front leg of the chair so that I didn't have to worry about tripping over them, because I slid them back once. Every visit after that, he'd slide the sandals out of the way. He'd wait for me. The first couple of visits, he waited for me to say, go ahead and lie down. After that, his routine, he'd sit, I'd walk into the room, he'd stand up, slide the shoes off exactly the same way, right next to each other, slide them over, slide them back, lay down on this table the same way. We'd talk. We even laughed and joked sometimes. He started to pick up on my humor. He learned it, and everything went well. And that was actually improving his awareness and his own self-awareness, because shortly after starting care with us, and a lot of the things we do at the office, shortly after starting care with us, he literally started working out with his father. And he started to become his conversation started becoming more and more about how he was working out, how he was exercising. It was really pretty cool. And the reason I mention this, and we talk about the parietal lobes, is because the more you move, the more you strengthen your brain. You really do. It's simple brains or simple nervous system, simple movement. Complicated brains, complicated movement. Or the more complicated your movement has to be, the more complicated your brain has to be to do those movements. And our postures, running around on two legs, Even monkeys and gorillas tend to do 4 for the most part. 2 legs changes everything. The balance, the center, the automatic movements that your brain has to be aware of. The minute I raise up my hand, my center of gravity, if I reach out, it shifts forward. So now my body has to compensate and keep me from going with that weight or that center of gravity movement. They automatically tighten up behind me and they balance to my right arm, then both arms, then closer, then farther away. So that inner awareness develops. And then once we become aware of what makes us happy, what makes us sad, what hunger is, what pleasant smells, what unpleasant smells are, then we can actually understand how other people feel. And the parietal lobes, hugely important for our awareness centers, both inside and outside. Then we jump back to how I started with lower your gaze with vision. When you look down, in this case, all I'm going to do is tilt my eyes down, okay? So I lower my gaze. Now, that vision, when I lower, is more stimulating to the parietal lobes. Remember how I talked about vision crossing over? It hits the same side, but some of it also crosses over so that both sides of your brain get it. The same thing happens with up and down visual movements. When I look down, the whole brain gets it, it fires back to the occiput and the back of your head. Then it starts coming forward and it goes to different areas. Now, what happens here is looking down or the parietal lobes, looking down stimulates parietal function. Then add to that the parietal lobes. When the vision hits the occiput and comes forward, your parietal lobes are the where is it part of your vision. Believe it or not, this area and your temples, that's the what is it area, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. Where is it? So you hear a noise, it fires in, immediately you start looking around and you try to pick up the movement, the change of shape, you're playing a game and it's catch. Where is that? What's being thrown to me or at me? How fast is it coming in? But where is it? That's parietal lobe function. Where is it? Then you got your temporal function. What is it? It's a baseball and it's coming in as a fastball. Now, if I don't have a glove, I'm not trying to catch it, right? It's coming in. What is it? What's the speed? Your brain is also saying, where is it? Where is it going to hit me? How do I duck out of the way, right? So that's how it all works together. You've got where is it? What is it? And then you can also look at when we do testing and training, now that you have this background with the testing and training, and this is for educational purposes only again, you can literally train in where is it? In this case, I'm sitting here, and that's why I'd like a partner, because you'll know where your hand is, okay? And what's really cool is you can also tie in a little bit of temporal function with sound. So you've got a snap, and remember, I'm on this side, okay? So it's actually firing over here. It's going to cross over. It'd be ideal if I could use my right hand to reach for it, okay? Because my right hearing stimulates left function, left controls right body. So there you go. Imagine then in this case, I'm going to snap this finger over here. That's going to come in this ear. It's going to cover the whole brain, but especially over to the left side for processing. And then my left brain is going to tell this right hand where that sound is. And what you do is, in this case, I'll close my eyes, but then I know where I am. So I'm going to reach up. Every time it snaps, you reach to it, okay? And that would be parietal lobe functioning with where is it to sound, okay? Or if you don't want sound, you can actually train it in. Again, I'm using my left hand, and I'm working with my right hand, though, in my left hemisphere, okay? So I'm going to use my left hand to reach. Now, there it is. I'm looking at you guys, peripheral vision, I touch it. Or you can look at it, train it in, move your arm around, train it in. Now, someone else is out there, right? So then pretend my eyes are closed. My eyes are closed now. Now I'm touching and it's out there and I'm doing my thing. Whoops, I missed, didn't I? So I'm doing my thing. And then pretend it's your spouse or family member. Now what you do is you'll do it eyes open, train it in. There it is. Come off your hand, come from your shoulder, come from your head, train it in. You know where it is. You have this mental picture. Now, without teasing each other, now the person that's doing the touching closes their eyes. Now it's touch, 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 touch. That's going to be a stimulation mainly of your parietal lobe. Of course, there's some cerebellum to be smooth movement so I don't overshoot it or hit it, hit it hard or come up short. There's balanced, smooth movement. But the main thing I was doing was stimulating my left hemisphere with right-sided movement. Now we can do the same thing. Now I would stimulate my right hemisphere by using my left hand to do the same thing. Does that make sense? So to include stimulation of the parietal lobes, I really recommend a lot of where is it stuff and awareness of what's going on around you. With the temporal, and then finish with lower field of vision. So you could actually, if you wanted to, not just up here, but then move it down. But of course, you can't see it in the camera, but you could move it down here so that you train it in. Your vision's down here. You're really stimulating parietal lobe function. And then with that in mind, now when you hear the snap, you're reaching way down, put it real low in that lower field of vision. And that really stimulates that where is it in parietal lobe function. The next would be the temporal lobes. Like I said, the lower part of the brain, right in the ear area and surrounding the ears too, up in this area here, and temples. So with that in mind, now that's going to be your upper field of vision. And of course, upper right stimulates lower, well, it crosses through and stimulates lower left, and upper left crosses through and stimulates lower right more. And then there, very important, you could literally use, again, this would be a lot of upper field of vision movement, but then a lot of sound. Snap, 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 snap there, snap, snap there, snap. Whoops, almost missed there. There. Does that make sense? And the same thing for the other side. So what you're doing is right hand movement would be both hemispheres, but predominantly the left. And then left hand movement, both hemispheres, predominantly right. And that could be stimulating with the audio sound. And then if you wanted to, you could actually use different sounds to bring in, this is really cool, you bring in the frontal lobes to initiate or inhibit. This sound, you reach out and touch to it. This sound, you don't. And that's how you can stimulate. We did the frontal cortex last week. That's how you would stimulate the parietal lobes, and that's how you would stimulate the temporal lobes. And then, of course, vision is vision. That's what your occiput does. It's visual, and then it spreads out. It hits. Then you start discerning things. 17 is the main area. Then it goes into 18 and 19. Then it gets pushed around your brain to figure things out. Now, with that in mind, with brain function, we've covered everything stimulating those areas. And right now, my computer guy and I are working on a project that one of my children actually recommended. And we're going to come up with, we are producing a manual with a whole bunch of like stuff in it and for educational purposes only. And it'll give you something to take to your physicians if you ever have any questions. It's like I said, because I don't know the details of any of your cases, my information is only for informational purposes. I can't diagnose. Number one, it's against the law. Number two, I wouldn't feel right because I don't know enough about you, any of the individuals. But what I want to do now is I want to talk about the brain function and why it's so important we maintain a good community of friends. And like we have this community here and so many of the names on the Zoom part of it, I recognize and I see all the time. And I miss a couple people that I don't see in here. And that's important because the Quran, I'm going to give you two different locations. Surah 4 and I believe it's Surah 24, where it talks about the company you keep. So if it's okay with you, let me bring the Quran in, and we will start with, I'm sorry, chapter 25, not 24, and I'll read it in English. You can go to chapter 25. The particular verse is verse 28, but chapter 25, it'll be, I'm going to read chapter 25, verses 24 to 29, so you get the whole context. 24 to 29. The dwellers of paradise, those who deserved it through their faith and righteousness, will on that day, talking about the day of judgment and resurrection, have the best abode and have the fairest of places for repose or relaxation. They're in heaven. And remember, the day when the heavens shall be rent asunder with clouds, and the angels will be sent down with a grand descending. The sovereignty on that day will be the true sovereignty belonging to the most beneficent. And it will be a hard day for the disbelievers, those who disbelieve in the oneness of Allah. And remember the day when the Zalim, the wrongdoers, polytheists, the oppressors, will bite at his hands. He will say, oh, would I had not taken, and remember the day when the Zalim will bite at his hands. He will say, oh, would that I had taken a path with the messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the disbelievers at his time, of his day, and further on. Ah, woe to me, would that I had never taken so-and-so as a friend. He indeed led me astray from the reminder after it had come to me, and Satan is ever a deserter to man in the hour of need. Let me read that to you again. Oh, woe to me, would that I had never taken so-and-so as a friend. So you can't even blame, on the day of judgment, you can't blame someone else for your actions. You chose to go along with that person. You chose to be misguided. You chose to be off the path of God. And quite dramatically, if you're being thrown in the hellfire. He indeed led me astray from the reminder after it had come to me, and Satan is ever a deserter to man in the hour of need. So everything that's off the right path is a path with Satan. Now we'll turn to chapter 4. And I will read from, I'm going to read 138 to 140. In particular, verse 140 is the one I'm prefixing. And then, if that's the right word, prefixing. And then we will jump down to 144 and give the continuation to 147. So I'll start with 138. Really great description here to match what we just came from. Give to the hypocrites the tidings that there is for them a painful torment. Those who take disbelievers for awliya, protectors or helpers in that, instead of believers, do they seek honor, power, and glory with them? Verily, then to Allah belongs all honor, power, and glory. And it has already been revealed to you in the book that when you hear the verses of Allah being denied and mocked at, then sit not with them until they engage in a talk other than that. But if you stayed with them, certainly in that case, you would be like them. Surely Allah will collect the hypocrites and disbelievers all together in hell. Now we'll turn to verse 144. O you who believe, take not for awliya disbelievers instead of believers. Do you wish to offer Allah a manifest proof against yourselves? Verily, the hypocrites will be in the lowest depths or grades of the fire. No helper will you find for them, except as a gentle reminder and a very strong reminder, but the love, the forgiveness. Allah tells us over and over again that his mercy outweighs his wrath. And let me say that again. No helper will you find for them except those who repent from hypocrisy, do righteous good deeds, hold fast to Allah, and purify their religion for Allah, by worshiping none but Allah, and do good for Allah's sake only, not to show off. Then they will be with the believers, and Allah will grant to the believers a great reward. Why should Allah punish you if you thanked him, repentance and belief, and have believed in him? And Allah is ever all appreciative of good and all knowing. Now, just to be clear, because I get that question, why don't you just say God? I'm fine with that, because I do sometimes. It's just that the Quran is revealed in Arabic, and Allah is El Ilah, meaning the God, the one God, the only God, however you want to translate it. So when I'm reading out of Quran, if it says Allah, I say Allah. But don't let that, for those of you who think I'm referencing something separate from the one true God, the creator of all of us, I'm not referencing something else. It's Allah. And it's not, and this isn't an apologetic response. I don't want you to be chased away because of the way you think of something without me criticizing, because words are important to some of us. So it's very important to understand that when you disbelieve, let me start with real cool research. I read the abstract probably 6 months to a year ago. It was released a little before that, but I read an abstract about, and I think I mentioned it before, and that's why I pulled up these verses of awareness, lowering your gaze, being aware of your surroundings. And I really feel that awareness fits here, because there was a nice research project that tested multiple groups. And when they did the EEGs, and I can't remember whether it was just EEG or QEEG, but what they found was, QEEG really shows, that's what a lot of us in functional neurology use. Those brain waves, when people were working together, like it says, if you're in a group and they're bad talking, you're going to start to sync with those brain waves if you stay in that group. And the Quran warned us approximately 1500 years ago, that you will be counted among them. Well, how is that fair if you're a believer and they're non-believers? It is fair in the sense that modern science has now confirmed, because we can measure brain waves, when you're working within a group, we start to sync up. Our brain waves, SYNC, synchronize together. So it's hugely important to stay in a good circle of friends. You see with the people running America right now, the people up front, these guys and girls all say the same stuff. They talk the same way. Almost everything they say is exactly the opposite of what they mean. And they all say it together, literally, even when they're in separate rooms and separate weeks and separate shows, and it's all the same talk. They are really, really synchronized in their corruption. And as the Quran tells us in those verses right there, and there are many others, that the hypocrisy is going to lead them into the fire. And since they aren't working in God's path, they aren't working in the way we're supposed to be working, the empathy, taking care of each other, being honest, everything we're supposed to be doing as good human beings, not lying, not cheating, not genocide, not murder, little babies, little kids, everything that's going on in the world right now, separating families, killing families. Those guys are fine with it because those are the minds, those are the thoughts, that's where they are synchronized. All right. And the brain does that automatically. You start to think of, if you're in a room with a whole bunch of angry, depressed people, it only takes you a few minutes. You can walk in a great mood and you know it for yourself. You start to ramp right down. If nothing else, you're just miserable that you're in a room with miserable people, right? It's hard to be the good person in a bad group. Or it's real easy because they're so bad, but you don't feel so good after you leave the room. There are certain patients that require a lot of hard work, especially the patients that I would say we as a staff care more for their health than they care. I can make all the recommendations. I can share everything I've ever learned, but if you don't institute any of it, then you're going to maintain the same problems that brought you in. You are not deficient in my care, so to speak. Hopefully I've helped. But the idea is you are not genetically deficient in my care. What you have to do is start implementing, like in healthcare, you have to start implementing healthy lifestyle changes. You should exercise. We all know you should exercise. You should eat better. You can fill yourself up and live a great life on just protein, fruits, and vegetables. Like I said before, orange soda is not a fruit. All right. These fruit roll-up things, that's not fruit. I was looking for halal bouillon at this store I shop at, and beef and chicken. Mom placed an order with me, so I was trying to find halal bouillon, and I was looking for something that said halal, and then of course it has beef and chicken stock and et cetera, et cetera. I grabbed one container, and it was almost halal, except for everything in it said artificial. So even though it was beef flavored, they literally did not have beef anywhere in the list of ingredients. Everything was sodium and and MSG, monosodium glutamate, I think is the word for it. And lots of MSG because that was right at the top of the list. The sodium was at the top of the list. And then right in there, one of the first few things, it said artificial flavors. So yes, it didn't have beef in it, but why would I buy beef stock that has no beef in it whatsoever, but it still tastes like beef, right? So it's literally trying to do the right thing in this case, but to eat correctly, for example, I don't want to introduce all that artificial stuff. I might as well grab a bag of potato chips too, right? The idea is we already know this stuff. And how do we say, my kids and I, we get together and they all exercise. And one of the things my daughter was saying last weekend, I was down there, and it was one of the few times because they all work. And when I come into town, somebody might be working that day. So it's usually 3 out of 4 of the kids and me. And one of my daughters actually said, how can I literally, the context of the conversation, the 2 girls, and well, all 4 of them were there, 2 boys, 2 girls. My one daughter was talking about how she had cut out the coconut water because one of the main ingredients of the coconut water that we all like was sugar. So I didn't buy any this time for them. And she said she cut it out because she's exercising, she's eating better, she cut out junk foods and everything. But when she realized that the coconut water had so much sugar in it, and she still had this little bit of a pooch as much as she was doing, she was mad at herself, and she told me not to buy her coconut water anymore. So I didn't. And then her sister actually said, how can we not work out? My father does, my mother does, and my 88-year-old grandmother joins my father in the garage when we work out before it gets too hot down here. But the idea is, think about the influence of the community and those minds. She actually said, I absolutely have to exercise. And then, of course, her brother's talking about he has finally started to gain weight, 6'4". He graduated at like 155 pounds. Now he's up to 170. He found a partner that wants to work out the same way in the same amount and he's eating well, eating better, and actually eating more. And Jose, a friend from work, same kind of scenario, and they're both into it. And when they're not at work, they're hitting the gym. So it literally, that like-mindedness, the people you're around motivate you to do things, either be good or be bad, like these verses in the Quran tell us. And science now confirms that your brains literally will link up and sync with the people and think like the people that are surrounding you. So you really have to monitor your relationships, whether it's coworkers, whether it's friends, even some family. The Quran is against us cutting off the ties of the womb, kinship. And again, we're reminded that we only get 3 days to be angry at each other. Then you have to start making, then you can be held accountable or you're held at fault. So it's really important with all that in mind to that awareness of others now. And again, with our religious text, that awareness of others in the sense of how they can also influence us. Okay. Hugely important. And then, of course, awareness, and that awareness now shifting into, what's conversation? What are we talking about? What's the mood? Executive function. Do we initiate leaving or maybe initiating a change of topic? Do we inhibit leaving and initiate a change of topic? Or do we inhibit talking and we initiate leaving the group? Because the group like our parents used to tell us, like I tell my kids, if you've got bad friends, you're going to get involved in bad stuff. You will be counted like the people you surround yourself with. And that's hugely important. And that's, again, now to finish up the treatments and different recommendations to strengthen different areas, that'll finish up tying all of the brain together with this awareness of self and the awareness of the others around you. And then, of course, everything else that you're doing. Okay. Does anyone have any questions?